Jeremy Fowler of the Mothership, ESPN senior NFL reporter. David Montgomery traded from the Lions to the Texans. Your thoughts on that, and then what's that mean for Joe Mixon?
Yeah, Dan, David Montgomery's trade market might as well have had a trade me sign at the NFL Combine because teams had the full expectation that he would welcome a change of scenery, that with Jahmyr Gibbs being the one in Detroit, Montgomery felt like at age 28, still had some miles left, and he had a good market because he was only due $6 million. So Houston gave up a lot to get him, a fourth and a seventh round pick, which is a little rich, but GM Nick Caserio is one of the most aggressive in the league. He will do a trade like that and get ahead of it and just take the guesswork out, even if it means giving up more than maybe he would have wanted. So that certainly helps. Montgomery will go into Houston as the number one back. I think that's pretty clear at this point. They have Woody Marks, a young player. And that leaves a big question mark for Joe Mixon, who was a cap casualty candidate anyways. So I believe that marriage is probably over at this point, barring a surprise. You know, certainly they loved Mixon last year, so maybe there's a chance he can come back healthy this year. But it seems like the writing's on the wall with this Montgomery trade.
Does C.J. Stroud get a contract extension before this new season?
You know what? I actually think there's a trend that could be brewing, and this will be an interesting case study for that. Do teams pay quarterbacks the huge money, even if that quarterback is not a top-tier guy, right? Like we saw it with Tua 2 years ago. Jared Goff, Trevor Lawrence, Jordan Love, all those guys were kind of outside of the top 10. They all got paid. It worked out for some. It didn't work out for Miami and Tua, where they're now stuck with $54 million in guaranteed money. I think that teams are going to rethink that process if they don't have a guy who's at the top shelf. If they have a guy who's in the middle shelf, they might wait a year, make him prove it in that fourth year. So, you know, Houston has made clear they want C.J. Stroud to be their quarterback in 2026. What that financial commitment looks like is still unknown, and I'm not wholly convinced that they're going to do it. I think they could kind of wait this out a little bit and see what he does, continue to build the team around him. Now, I do believe Stroud is not just looking for the most massive number you can think of. He doesn't want to suppress his own market, but he does know that they got to pay Will Anderson, the pass rusher. They got to pay some other pieces. They got to build a winner around him. I think he values being in Houston and doesn't want to cripple them long-term as well. So maybe because of that, there's a sweet spot deal that they can do in the short term that makes sense for both sides. But I just think by and large, teams are going to start to wait. I mean, Dan, you know, you've seen there are 8 or 9 quarterbacks out there in the last few years of guys that were not very good coming out, got benched, reset, and now they're good options. So you're not beholden to the draft pick that you selected who's maybe like good and not great. Like you can wait a little bit. You can find a Daniel Jones or a Baker Mayfield if you need to, you know, just because you don't want to pay the guy you have right now.
Kyler Murray's market. Are the Cardinals on the hook for how much?
So they're on the hook for, they've already paid or locked into some guarantees. I think it's 18 million, somewhere around there. He's got another big trigger coming up, I believe the 5th day of the new league year. So think mid-March is an artificial deadline. I think it's close to 20 million. It's a pretty big number they would be on the hook for if they let him stay on the roster through, say, March 15th or whatever that date is. So that's an artificial deadline that they are going to move on. It would be a shock if they kept him on that number. So if you cut him, that does open up a situation where a team, because of the guarantees he's already been paid, can get him on a cheap contract potentially. He's going to have value. You know, Minnesota, I know, is considering Kyler Murray. He's one of their stronger considerations, I would say, along with Geno Smith. That's probably tier 1 for them. You know, maybe they look into the Derek Carr situation, but I haven't heard anything strong there that teams are in that market right now. Tua would probably be more of a backup, second-tier option for them. So all these guys want to go to Minnesota, Dan, because it's a great environment. You got Kevin O'Connell, you got Justin Jefferson, you got some pieces to work with. That is a hot team right now for the quarterback market. Even though they don't have a lot of money to spend, they have all these quarterbacks that are probably getting cut that are cheap because of the offset language and the guarantees they already have.
Is J.J. McCarthy going to get cut?
I would be surprised if he gets cut. It's a similar situation to Anthony Richardson last year. I think in a perfect world, they would like to bring somebody on. But like if you bring on Geno Smith, let's say, right? That why I think he's interesting to Minnesota is because, you know, he's had enough struggles where if you bring him in and sell him as a competitor to JJ, you can kind of sell it, but you can also sell it as, yeah, he's probably the starter. So you're hedging both ways. And you can keep it alive with JJ a little bit, and maybe he surprises you in camp. But, we've all been there, Dan. It's kind of like when you get broken up with, where somebody starts seeing other people. Like when they do that, it's kind of clear it's probably over. So there's that element to the J.J. McCarthy situation as well. Similar to Anthony Richardson with Daniel Jones. When they signed Daniel Jones, they were probably going to start him. They were going to have a competition in camp and maybe see if Richardson can play him out, but they sort of knew where it was going. I think this is a similar situation in Minnesota. They know where this is headed, but they'll leave a little wiggle room for JJ to maybe surprise them.
Talking to Jeremy Fowler, Mothership ESPN senior NFL reporter. If the Steelers don't have Aaron Rodgers, what is plan B?
Right now, I would say plan B is Will Howard, who's a 6th-round pick. That wouldn't be the flashy option, but they, just talking to people there, they really do like him a lot. He's great in the huddle, in the locker room. He's great with teammates. He's acquitted himself well. They felt like Aaron Rodgers did a really good job mentoring him last year, and that he might just be ready to play. Now, the flip side of that is they've done a lot of homework on this draft, dating back to really 2 years ago. They've been kind of loading up for this draft class to potentially take a quarterback. Now, it's not as strong as people thought it was probably going to be 6 months ago when you had all those names that, whether it's Drew Aller, Penn State, or 3 or 4 of them that you thought were going to be in the mix in the first round. It just didn't work out. So that's the crapshoot of the draft, but they've done a lot of homework where if they took one this year, it would not shock me. And maybe it's somewhere high. Maybe it's Ty Simpson in the late first, or they can find a way to get him in the second, or Garrett Nussmeier day 2. Like I do think they've looked long and hard at those type of options.
The Jets situation. What did they do at quarterback?
So if we're playing musical chairs, Dan, they're probably going to get the last chair. Like whoever's left, the Jets are going to get.
Why? Nobody wants to play there?
I mean, unless they're willing to just overpay. You have to overpay in New York to get the guy you want. No, nobody wants to play there. I shouldn't say nobody, but it's not an attractive spot for these quarterbacks. Like I mentioned, Minnesota. I would say Arizona and Miami are both probably slightly more attractive than the Jets right now. I would say that in the view of these quarterbacks or people in the market. Now, the Jets offer Garrett Wilson. They have a pretty good offensive line. Breece Hall, they're probably going to tag him. So you do have some pieces there. They got a ton of first-round picks in the next 2 drafts. Darren Muji, the GM, has set that up with trades. So, you might have something. But they got Justin Fields. He's still on the books for $10 million in guarantees. They very well could just kind of bite that bullet, cut them, and move on. I just think they'll end up getting, one of those bridge options. Maybe it's Jacoby Brissett in Arizona. They could trade him. It could be somebody like that. I just don't think they're going to get the top option.
Can somebody build a bridge and name it the, Jacoby Brissett Bridge? Like
the Brissett Bridge, yeah.
I mean, they should. After all these years, he's been a bridge quarterback. I mean, there's Teddy Bridgewater, but, it's like it's Jacoby Bridgewater. Kirk Cousins,
sure,
going to have a home?
I think there's a chance of that. I think he's going to have to wait a little bit. I don't sense he's in that top tier of guys that's going to get a job right off the bat. I think he'd be a backup or a third option for Minnesota. Backup as in, like who they want to sign as their bridge option.
Oh, okay.
I think he's sort of in that group with Tua in that second tier for Minnesota, for example. But I don't think there's going to be movement on him heavy out of the gate. Now he's got to be released by Atlanta. That will happen at the new league year next week, and then you go from there. So he's played well enough to get a job somewhere, but there's not a clear path right now that I'm hearing. I think he could just strategically wait a little bit. And look, he's got this TV situation in his back pocket. He kind of did a trial basis during the season, did pretty well. He's good talking football. Like he kind of has that as an option. I think he still wants to play, but certainly he's intrigued by that side of things on the broadcast media side.
What about my guy, Malik Willis?
Malik Willis he's going to get a nice contract. He's going to get paid. Some of the numbers that have been floated out there several times last week, $30+ million. I would shoot that down. I've talked to a dozen teams about it. They don't have him in the $30 million range. They have him in that $20 million bucket, maybe 25. So I think that's a sweet spot unless things get crazy and he's just got 3 teams that have to have him. Miami's definitely in. Arizona might very well be in, but they also might go Jimmy Garoppolo, another bridge option for you, Dan. And then the third one would be, like maybe the Jets won't overpay there.
But Pittsburgh is not an option?
I don't sense that right now.
Okay.
Cleveland as well. I don't think Cleveland's an option. Malik Willis' agent is David Montgomery, who has Deshaun Watson, who has a chance to start in Cleveland. I would be shocked if that happened.
Do you think that's a legitimate shot that Deshaun Watson's the starting quarterback this upcoming season?
I think it's a shot. I don't know if I'm going to say legitimate shot yet. I do believe it will be on the table. I was told they're going to let those guys compete and roll.
But
the
if
ball
he's
out.
healthy, though, he should be the starting quarterback.
Well, and I would say people close to Deshaun would tell you that the Kevin Stefanski, Deshaun Watson fit it didn't work, and it probably wasn't the offense where he's been best. That Gary Kubiak wide zone system where it's a lot under center in the play action. Todd Monken's system will be better for Deshaun Watson. It's more what he's used to. Todd Monken is sort of a chameleon. He can change his offense a lot of different ways, but he can appeal to the guy who was really good in college and did some spread offense concepts. Like, that's Deshaun. So the feeling is like, hey, let's try this. Maybe he's got this last year left on his deal. We owe him $46 million. Nobody's going to take him. So let's just see how it goes and roll the ball out and see if Shador, Sanders, or Dylan Gabriel can beat him out.
The Raiders situation, so you take Fernando Mendoza.
Yeah.
I don't assume he's going to start the season as the number one quarterback, unless you hear otherwise. But I think they got to beef up that team a little bit, certainly the offensive line. Mm-hmm. Who is the backup, or maybe who's going to be the starting quarterback with the Raiders?
Well, that's a big piece to all this, Dan, because you have Geno Smith, who could find a home as a starter elsewhere still. Last year wasn't all his fault. It was a really bad team. And so I think what's happening here is if you're Geno, you're saying, okay, if I stay here, I'll probably start, but we're still bad. And I'm playing 8 games and I'm going to get benched. And then my career is cratered. Where can they just trade or release me here and I can get out and go to a Minnesota or a Miami or somewhere to just reset my career again, which he's done multiple times. And, to his credit, he's become a Pro Bowler, a couple years ago in Seattle. So that's the sense right now. I'd be surprised if he's on the roster in Vegas. I think what they'll do is they'll draft Mendoza and they'll get a steady veteran somewhere, whether it's Aiden O'Connell who's there or it's somebody else, somebody who can kind of half mentor, half play games and just get Mendoza out there when he's ready, whether that's week 1 or week 12 or next year. But they're trying to play the long game there with everything. They know they need a lot. They're going to be active in free agency because they have to. They got $100 million to spend. They're going to get a guard or a center and a receiver and a linebacker. Like, they have a lot of holes, and it's going to take 2 years to fill them.
Great stuff as always. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
That's Jeremy Fowler of the Mothership, ESPN senior NFL reporter.